Crying Game was a really good example of a movie where we used the audience to sell the movie, in a sense, because it hadn't been particularly successful in Europe before we bought it and sold it. And we made all of the reviewers sign an agreement or come to an agreement beforehand that when they reviewed it, they couldn't give away the secret of the movie. So basically, all the reviews started to show up where people saying it's a great movie, but I can't tell you the ending. So what did people have to do? They had to go to the movie to see what the ending was.
Welcome to another episode of the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. I'm Chris Bush.
And I am Dean Slider.
On the Filmosophers Show, we talk about film and filmosophy with the people who make and who love the movies. And today we are delighted to have as our guest Joel Roodman. Joel was part of the early management team of Miramax Films that distributed hundreds of independent feature films, including Bullets Over Broadway, Cinema Paradiso, Good Will Hunting, Jackie Brown, Life is Beautiful, Like Water for Chocolate, Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Rounders, Shakespeare in Love, Strictly Ballroom, The Crying Game, The English Patient, The Grifters, The Piano, Talented Mr. Ripley, and hundreds more. And that's quite a that is a
unbelievable. That is an unbelievable list
and
of films.
It's something I certainly want us to talk about. Is that picking winners was part of the magic of that whole scene. So, in addition, Joel has produced 2 feature films for Warner Brothers and Lionsgate, and he's currently producing a multi-part filmed limited television series based on the life of Duke Ellington. So, Joel, welcome to the show. It's wonderful to have you, and please commence the regaling.
Well, I will say this. It's funny, in preparation for today's talk, I went onto Wikipedia and I printed up the list of movies that we distributed when I was at Miramax, which was from about 1990 to about 1999. I was there for about 9 years, and with a 2-year break in between. And I printed it up, and it turned out to be 9 pages. And I ended up looking at all the names on this list, and I said, oh yeah, right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. They weren't all winners, that's for sure. But I highlighted some of them, which you mentioned many in the intro. Thank you very much. But there was just so many fantastic movies that we were fortunate to work on at a very interesting time in the independent film world. Certainly a lot of memories that I take with me.
Tell us how you got started with them.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I'm Canadian. I don't hold that against me. And I was living in Toronto at the time. So I started to work for this pay television network, and I was there for a couple of years. During that period of time, it was purchased by another big Canadian company called Astro Bellevue Pathé, who was in various businesses, and they produced Porky's, actually, which was at the time Canada's most successful film. And we had just started to get into home video. It gave me the opportunity to start working with the studios in the United States. And so I got really excited about the opportunity to sort of have that exposure, working with the studio people. It sounded really like a place I wanted to work, but I couldn't go work in the United States because I didn't have a green card. I didn't have any particular skill that was going to get me down and across the border or anything like that. And anyway, long story short, I entered this green card lottery, of which apparently there were hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Canadians who entered, and they gave away 500 by lottery, and I won. I was fortunate to win one. So I got this unrestricted green card, which allowed me to move to the States. And I didn't have to have a job. I could just move there. So I looked at moving to Los Angeles and going to work for a studio. And I looked at New York as well. And I'd heard about this small company called Miramax at the time that had been pretty scrappy. They'd released Sex, Lies, and Videotape and getting a lot of ink. I read about the brothers Weinstein that were working there. Some of the articles, it sounded like my type of place, rough and tumble, and get your hands dirty and that sort of thing. So I said to myself, well, I'll just apply for a job. So I wrote a letter sort of pre-email days, to Harvey Weinstein, whose name I just knew from reading about it. And I said, "Hi, Harvey, my name's Joel Roodman. I'd like to come work for Miramax. I think I'd be a great addition. I really can't afford for you not to hire me because I just bet 20 friends $50 each that you'd actually hire me, and I can't afford to lose $1,000." I sent it off. And sure enough, I got a phone call about 2 weeks later from his assistant and said, "Joel, Harvey wants you to come down and do an interview." So I jumped on a plane and went down to New York and had one of the craziest interviews of my entire life. First of all, I made me wait about 5.5 hours in the lobby for the interview to start. I was wearing a suit, which I was totally overdressed for. And just finally someone came around 3 o'clock and said, "Okay, you can go in." And I walked into his office, and I'd never met him before, a very imposing figure. And he just basically said, "Why are you here?" I said, "I'm here because you had me down for an interview." He goes, "Oh, yeah. All right. Well, okay. So why should I hire you?" I said, "Well, I created this little portfolio of work that I've done. I'd spent quite a few hours doing it. I said, I'd like to show it to you." And he grabbed it from me. He opened it up to the middle and just closed it and said, "I don't give a F about this at all." And so I just talked to him for 5 minutes and said why he should hire me. And he said, "Okay, you're hired." Didn't tell me what my job was, didn't tell me what my salary was or anything. And he said, "If you want this job, you should actually be paying me for it, because you're never going to get an education like this in the film business. You can't get to college." He says, "You'll be doing everything." He says, "You want this job, take it." It's like about a 80% haircut from what I was making on salary in Canada. But I said, "Well, this sounds like the type of place I could work at." And I really wanted to live in New York. I really wanted to live in a big city like that. Compared to Toronto, it was even bigger and was really appealed to me. I love New York. So I took the job, and that's how I started at Miramax Films.
Wow. And did that pretty much set the tone? Did that interview set the tone for your days of employment there?
Well, it was definitely a crazy place, and obviously Harvey has his own history now, which is very sad, and we've all read about it. But at the time, it was a super exciting time. We were buying films. We were having difficulty even making payroll. Like, it was just that crazy. Days started at 9 and didn't end until sometimes 11, 12 o'clock at night. And we were releasing so many movies and trying so many different things and all these different approaches to changing how distribution worked in independent film. Some of the craziest stuff. I mean, I was fired 3 weeks after I started the job. At the time, we were doing market research screenings for movies at various places in New York. One of them is called the Angelica Film Center. And we had a movie called High Heels. And I was literally 3 weeks into the job. And whoever booked the screening room booked it for like regular movie theater for 2 hours. And then typically what would happen is they would hand out survey cards and have a focus group afterward. And so the movie ended, and the staff just sort of walked through the audience and handed everybody these survey cards and pencils. And then as soon as they did that, the 9 o'clock showing was supposed to start for a regular movie, but we weren't done. We had 200 people in the movie theater, and it would turn into a big situation. And Harvey ended up going to the back of the theater and blocking the door. And a lot of people started yelling and screaming, and all the people in the theater looked back, and all the employees were like, "What's going on there?" Big commotion. And so I went back there, and there was another person there who was fairly large, Harvey size. And the two of them looked like they were going to get really close to something physical. So I got in between them, and I said, "Stop." And Harvey yelled and screamed at me and called me, "You're an effing moron. You're dumb Canuck. You never say that to me. I'm Harvey Weinstein. You're fired. You're done. You're toast. Leave. You're never going to work in this business again." So I walked out of there, and I'm going, "Oh my God, what have I done? I just got fired by Harvey Weinstein." I just moved here, hardly making any money, can't really pay for the apartment. My wife at the time was like, what, you know, I get back, she says, what'd you do? I was like, I don't know. And about 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, my other boss, my direct boss called me up and he goes, all right, Joel, he goes, Harvey's calmed down. He realizes that you probably did the right thing. He wants you to come back to work tomorrow. So I went back to work. And about 9 o'clock, he came over to me in my little bunk desk that I had. We had these really small offices in the Tribeca Film Center. And he goes, okay, Roodman, all right, you know, you probably saved me a lawsuit or something. So I'm going to hire you back and I'm going to give you a raise. And you're going to be director of market research. I want you to run all these market research screenings from now on. And you're going to book the room. You're going to make sure we have it for enough time. You're going to run the focus group and you're in charge. I'd never done any market research in my life. So that was the type of place it was. And I ended up doing that. And I spent a good portion of my first few years in market research and marketing and distribution, and was fortunate enough to, see a lot of films far in advance before they were distributed, where market research wasn't just about trying to fix movies, of which we had many that needed to be fixed for sure, but also trying to determine who the audience was, what they responded to best, and how we could best position it for the marketplace. And it was an interesting role because it allowed me to gain a lot of the confidence of Harvey and his brother Bob. They put a lot of trust in my ability to be able to determine what people like, to be able to sift through these research results and provide an analysis of what the film was like. And ultimately, in a lot of cases, you had to tell the director that their baby was ugly, that they've spent 2, 3, 4, 5 years working on something and people just don't like your movie. And that's a very difficult conversation to have with someone. And I had to do that a lot. I had to do that many, many times. And there was nothing better than tell someone that, you didn't have to tell them that the movie was fantastic. But, I remember doing the market research screening for Pulp Fiction. We didn't even hand out the cards. People were going nuts before the movie ended. We didn't even have to hand them out and do a focus group.
Going nuts in a good way?
Oh, yeah, in a good way. And
Yeah.
going like, this is unbelievable.
Right.
This is what a film was. 93, 94, I guess. And, at that time it was great. And actually, if I remember correctly, Quentin Tarantino was in the back of the audience and no one knew that. He was sort of like, typically what happened is the director and the talent would come into the market research screenings after the lights were down, because if the audience knew that they were there, they might affect their ratings and scores of the movies. And afterwards, he sort of stood there to take the kudos, which was nice. And people were walking out. Literally, I remember people bowing down and saying, "Oh my God, Quentin Tarantino, you're God."
Uh-huh.
So we knew we had a hit there. So, and then there are other movies that were just so awful that sitting down and trying to fix them, or even telling the director that the movie needs a lot of work. It was definitely an art form to be able to get to that point where we could get them to fix their movie, especially if they had Final Cut or something like that.
Now, how common was it to have a situation where, based on the market research experience, you would go back and do fixing, to do reshooting, re-editing?
Reshooting and reshooting was not that often, because that was an expensive proposition. But editing, voiceover, screen, just putting something on the screen, saying the date and the year to help. Because whenever there's confusion for a lot of the audience, they could understand how we went from this part of the story to the next.
Right.
Or if there were portions of the studio that seemed really slow or the music didn't work, so we'd try it. And the thing was, and this is the difficult part, is that when you had a movie that was problematic, you'd have to do 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 market research screenings of the same movie and just change it a little bit, and see if those numbers and those scores would change. So it was not an easy process, but there were numerous examples where we were able to take a film that had mediocre results and turned it into something where people actually enjoyed it and went to see it. So
are there films? I mean, the list that we started this podcast with, is so impressive. Are there films that we would know that were significantly changed as a result of the market research?
to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think it's fair for me to bring those up. Simply because we do those market research screenings in confidence, and I'm not afraid to talk about the ones that are great, but the ones that weren't that great, I don't know if a lot of those people are still out there, and I'd hate to have them give me a phone call and say, "Wait a second, you didn't tell me that," or that sort of thing. But
Right.
it's a tough one to answer. But there are numerous examples for sure.
But they know if their film was changed, they already know that.
Well, they would be involved in changing.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we just took it on and edited it without them.
Right.
Most of the time. I mean, there's other stories out there which other people have written about that isn't the case, but I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like to tell this one story about a movie that we had called Truth or Dare. It was a Madonna documentary. And we were editing the trailer. And the trailer came back, and we were in a marketing meeting, and it was awful. It didn't work. Harvey was very upset, and he just pointed at me and said, "You go do it, Roodman. You could probably do a better job." So I went into the editing suite with an editor, and I didn't know what I was really doing, and we just sort of recut it and that sort of thing, and showed it the next day, and they kind of used it, and the movie did well. And Madonna came in that day for literally about 15 minutes. She came into the editing suite to sort of look. We had a conversation. About 7 years later, I'm standing on 45th Street, 46th Street or something in Manhattan, in front of the Paramount Hotel, and a limo pulls up, and Madonna gets out, and she looks at me and she goes, "Hi, Joel, how are you?" It blew me away. I mean, who am I? Like, she met me for 15 minutes. She remembered me. She must have met a million people ever since. So, it's stories like that, or hanging out with Brad Pitt or Tim Robbins or something like that. It was pretty cool. There was a lot of fun experiences like that.
Right. What was the secret sauce? What did the Weinsteins, or what did you all figure out? What did you do that created this incredible phenomenon of producing all those just illustrious films?
Well, I think I think part of it is timing. I think, at that period of time, Sundance Film Festival was just starting to really explode, and independent film had not really been had not really seen the type of success that home video brought along, where you could get a lot of films out there. There were many new, smaller independent movie theaters out there where these things could be seen. There was more competition to purchase these products by other distributors. Many of them have long gone. So you probably know it's all about big commercial tentpole films and that sort of thing. And then you have an ability by Miramax to do a really good job marketing them. I think we did a really good job of finding our audiences. We knew how to get them into theaters. We knew how to attract them at a time when we didn't have the distractions of TikTok and all these other things, where you knew how to reach your audience a lot easier. You knew where they were. It's much different now. And I think we also had of course, a lot of great films that created word of mouth. And that was something we relied on very early in Miramax's days, because we didn't have the big budgets the large studios did. We wanted people to tell their friends to go see our types of movies. I think Crying Game was a really good example of a movie where we used the audience to sell the movie, in a sense, because it hadn't been particularly successful in Europe before we bought it and sold it. And we made all of the reviewers sign an agreement, or come to an agreement beforehand, that when they reviewed it, they couldn't give away the secret of the movie. And the secret of the movie, I won't give it away in case you haven't seen it. And so basically all the reviews started to show up where people saying, "It's a great movie, but I can't tell you the ending." So what did people have to do? They had to go to the movie to see what the ending was. There was those little things. And I think it's a really good example. Or we would open a movie that we knew was really good, but needed some heat. We would open up a small amount of theaters to create a want to see. In other words, you can't get tickets. You know, you maybe open in one, like in a large market like Boston or Chicago or Los Angeles, only one or two screens. So it's difficult to get tickets, and it creates that sort of momentum to purchase more, or to, like, I wanted to go see it, but I couldn't get a ticket. So that was the sort of the word of mouth that we were able to capitalize on a lot of the films. Of course, on the opposite side, when you had a movie that wasn't very good, you'd open it on as many screens as possible before word of mouth got out.
Right, right. Hit and run. I read somewhere, I have to tell you, I love Shakespeare in Love. That's a film I've got to see at least once every couple of years. Just I find it's so partly I was an English teacher for 33 years, and I always taught Shakespeare, and I always wanted to be able to from my reading I had a sense of what the theater scene in Shakespeare's day was like, and I always wanted to have a time machine to bring my students there. And then when that film came out, I went, oh, there it is. There's my time machine. It was, I thought it was done so beautifully. And I read somewhere that there was a big fight somewhere within Miramax over the title, that someone, I don't know if it was Harvey or who, said, if you put the name Shakespeare in the title, that's going to be poison.
I actually don't know the details of that, so I don't want to, go out on a limb. I don't know all the details on that particular. It was towards the end of the time that I was there. Okay.
But yeah, sounds like there was a question about it in any case.
Right. I mean, there was. I mean, I will tell you that we had many films that we struggled with the titles with.
Mm-hmm.
Many times. We had one film just comes to mind that was called "The Pope Must Die."
Mm.
I believe we were getting a lot of heat, and I might be wrong, or we were going to get a rating because of the word "die" that was like an R rating, and I might be mistaken. So what Harvey and Bob decided to do was they added a T, so it became "The Pope Must Diet."
But that
we would try different things.
That's ridiculous.
I gotta look that one up again. It was because I saw it when I was looking through my list of movies. I go, oh yeah, The Pope Must Die. Yeah, right. We added a T to the title.
God. That's insane.
Yeah. But a lot of it was great because just going back to the original, most of the people that I work with there have gone on to incredible careers in the business. They run studios. They're senior executives. I mean, my assistants, I had quite a number of assistants during my period of time. And a number of them went on to very senior roles in studios and did quite well by it. And, I remember picking, just like I was sort of picked out of, my letter, I remember picking resumes out, just looking at, okay, this is a cool name, or you didn't have to have, 5 years of college or anything. It was just one of those got to see, roll up your sleeves places that you would just, if you got it, you're going to hang out. Some people lasted, years. You had to have a thick skin for sure. Some people lasted hours. There are people that, wouldn't even last probably the day. And a lot of people that walked out of there would never work in the business again.
Right. Now, I've heard it said, because of the changed financial structure of the industry, that the kind of things that you guys did, the independent medium budget films, are kind of an endangered species. Is that sound right to you?
Yeah, I think. There's other people that could probably speak to this better than I am, but I think what's happened in general is that you really need to build an audience through theatrical in order to have a good ancillary revenue in the back end, which is where you're going to make up your money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's extremely expensive to distribute a film, as you well know.
Mm-hmm.
And these smaller independent films, unless they're picked up by a studio, which simply aren't going to be able to, the idea of raising money independently to distribute your film it's just so long ago. It just doesn't happen that I'm aware of. And so the risk is much higher than it was. The cost of making films has gone up, and people want to see stars, and it's very difficult for these types of things to break out anymore. And while there are other places there are a lot of places on, streaming to be able to screen these things, you aren't necessarily going to make your money just from a streaming license, or at least make up the cost of the budget. So if you go and raise $1 million independently, which in itself is not easy, and you make $1 million independent film, and the likelihood, I mean, let's face it, it's a miracle to make a movie. It is. It's a miracle to find a great script. It's a miracle to get talent. It's a miracle to actually get it made correctly, or even take what's on the script and turn it into what you wanted it to be. And then once you've done that, someone's put money in and they haven't seen any money back, and then you're going to have to spend quite a period of time trying to find a way to recoup it. If you're making it independently, get someone to buy it, give you back, a portion of what you made. Hopefully you'll make some money at it. It's a slog. And, I myself would used to tell people, even though I raised money when I produced a movie, I would never put my own money into a movie. I think it's a huge risk.
Yeah.
And unless you have money that you're prepared to say, okay, I'll give it a shot, or you have a friend who you really like and you want to help them out, that's different. But if someone came to you and said, at least from my perspective, put money into an independent feature film and you're going to make a lot of money,
right?
I don't know. It's a tough call. So therefore, it makes it more difficult, I think, to make small independent films unless you're able to go and get the backing of a streamer or studio to do that.
Right.
Or you're independently wealthy.
Right. Now, of all those films on your list, are there any that you are just particularly fond of or proud of, or you just get a nice warm glow when you think about them?
Of course, and I think probably the one that stands out is the one that I mentioned earlier, Pulp Fiction.
Mm-hmm.
That was a turning point for the company. We were purchased by Disney, and that gave us more money to do more things. It wasn't without, and that's been well documented in a lot of great books about the independent film movement, and Miramax and the rise and fall and all that. It also changed the way we did business, and there's a lot of friction and that sort of thing. But it was truly an amazing film that I think everybody thought was, how can no one can tell crime stories like that, and do great actors and great performances. So yeah, that was probably my favorite movie that I worked on. When I say I worked on it, I was involved in marketing and distribution, that I was quite fond of.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also in my top 5 films that I love, that I like, which we can talk about later.
Any others that are in your, let's say, just top 5 of the ones that you worked on? Either
I gotta go back to my list here,
right?
Because there's so many.
Both the finished product, and also maybe the experience of working on it, being with the people.
Well, Bob Roberts was really cool, and I really enjoyed. I flew on a plane to the Toronto Film Festival with Tim Robbins, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, Reservoir Dogs, again, falls in the same one. I think Strictly Ballroom, which was an Australian film we picked up way back when, was a lot of fun. It was a dancing movie, and it was just a really well-told independent film. And if anybody who's watching this hasn't seen it, it's definitely worth renting.
Clerks. It was Baz Luhrmann's first big break, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
Very charming. Very
good. Yeah, exactly. And we made it did quite well for the company at the time. Like, it was a really good financially successful film for Miramax.
Any films come to mind that this could be a solid single, maybe stretch it into a double that just turned into like home run, box office gold, defied expectations, really became a huge hit for the company?
I'm looking at some of the films here that you're asking me tough questions, guys. I didn't realize we did this. But Life is Beautiful was a great one. Life is Beautiful, terrific, for film. Rounders. I mean, one of my favorite films, because if you're a poker fan, it's, to many people, Chris, as you well know, they look at Rounders as being the definitive great poker movie,
It
right?
is to poker what Cecil B.
Yeah.
DeMille's 10 Commandments is to
Right, exactly. And
religiously fervent.
I mean, it's just. I probably got stories of 20 of these. I mean, Jackie Brown was great, but of course that was another Tarantino movie, and Good Will Hunting, just on and on and on. I mean, Paris is Burning was great. Truth or Dare, I mentioned before. I really liked that movie. It was a great documentary. The Craze, which goes way back. That was, these are movies from the early 90s that I thought were, came out of nowhere and did quite well.
Again, one way or another, it just sounds like another example of, for better and for worse, the Weinsteins having the nose for something to, sniff out something with potential that other people were missing.
If they believed in your movie, you would never find a company and people who work there who would give it more than the 110% that we were possibly able to do. And the things that we used to do, the grassroots, going out and standing at movie theaters at night on the first opening and listening to what people have to say when they walk out. We used to go listen, just pretend we were in the audience and have them, and then say, oh, they're talking about this, and we might incorporate it into the advertising the next day or the next month. I mean, if it was good and it had market potential, and even if it was bad, we'd give it 110%, because we obviously were in a business to recoup. But the PR people that were there, I used to call most of the people that were PR were women, and they were just unbelievable. They could get you on Today's Show, and instead of it being like the top A-list star, we may have a B-list or someone who's not as well known. And they were able to work hard and get them on there and get the publicity that we needed, the free publicity, because we just didn't simply have the big budgets that a lot of the other studios have. And, we would fight and scream and yell to get heard. And that was, if you were a filmmaker or a producer who brought your film to us, if we bought it independently, just as a pickup, you were going to, in most cases, there's a lot of people that I think were disappointed, but they got the type of effort they wanted out of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm under the impression that all that aggressive marketing also involved you guys essentially starting what's become the modern phenomenon of Oscar campaigning. Is that right?
Most definitely. And they've changed the rules because of that. Way back when, we were the first people, I believe, to send out screeners. The idea was, if the film played on one or two screens, you would open something that you knew was good but needed word of mouth. You'd open it and hopefully get a nomination, and then reopen it again. And after the nominations came out, and sort of capitalized, nominated for 3 awards, nominated for 6 awards, and that sort of thing. That really helped, obviously. So I'm not saying we invented it, but we certainly practiced it a lot. And fighting to get as many people as possible to see our movies before they came out that were going to vote was a big part of the marketing of it.
Right. I remember there was a certain amount of belly aching when Shakespeare in Love beat Saving Private Ryan for Best Picture, and people saying, well, they didn't win it fair and square. It was because of Harvey Weinstein's campaigning. But I'm sorry, I will go to the grave saying Shakespeare in Love was a sublime film. Saving Private Ryan was an extraordinary 20-minute film, followed by blah blah blah.
Well, it's Tom Stopper, for God's sake. So Shakespeare in Love, Stopper did the screenplay.
Yep.
How are you going to beat that? Hey, I want to talk for a minute, Joel, about the I guess say the elephant in the room, your former boss. You know, he became the kind of the really the poster boy uh, for bad behavior as the whole Me Too movement came. And as that
Mhm.
happened and you kind of witnessed that whole thing unfold, just interested in kind of your reflections on, you know, on just the culture and the time you were there.
Well, let's put it this way. Did not know what was going on. And I think it's very likely that most of the people that I worked with during that period of time did not know what was going on. Did Harvey have a reputation as a philanderer? I think that was fairly common. But to the extent that it came out in 2018, 2017, whenever, was a shock to myself and many of my contemporaries at that period of time. In fact, I was interviewed, like many of them, by the Attorney General, New York Attorney General, about this. I had moved to Iowa, and I had received a phone call out of nowhere, and they said, "We'd like you to come in for an interview tomorrow." And I said, "Well, I can." They said, "Why not?" And I said, "Because I'm in Iowa." And they go, "What are you doing in Iowa?" I said, "Well, that's another story." But I ended up going back to New York and being interviewed, and basically told them what I'm saying right now, is that it was a pretty crazy, fast-paced time. There was a lot of people, male or female, who wanted to be around the company, who wanted to be associated with the company, wanted to be associated with their films. They wanted to come to the parties. They wanted to be part of the excitement and the fast action of the film, of the company. So there was lots going on. And I think in retrospect, the situation with Harvey was, you know, there was a wall there that nobody knew about, and it was taken care of by many of us. And you know, as an executive who was not his assistant, who did not see what he did every day, I was not aware of it. I mean, he'd sometimes, you know, we had a lot of interaction, lots of interaction with him on a daily basis, but not to the extent where I could have thought anything like that happened. As a father myself, I'm disgusted by it, and quite frankly, he got what he deserved, and maybe not enough. I don't know, but you know, that's it's interesting you asked me this, because at one point, up until about 2017, a lot of us wore our Miramax credentials on our sleeve, and we're pretty happy about it. You know, we used to kind of say, "Hey, yeah, I was there during that period of time." But then once that happened, and you started to go, "Oh my God, damn it!" You know, it wasn't sort of pushed up to the top of your resume, if you will. You sort of, because I went from, "Wow, you worked at Miramax," and it was crazy, like for many, many years. It was, what a time, and this, that, and the other thing. And then afterwards, like, "Oh, ooh, you worked for Harvey?" Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, you know, it was an interesting change that happened for the last few years.
Proud team member of the 29 White Sox.
Exactly.
The scandal will taint everyone
Yeah.
associated. So
Yeah, but I will say this. I mean, again, I'm still friends with a lot of people I worked with at the time, and to everyone I know, they were all just blown away that this was going on, and at least the people that I knew. I left for a couple of years, and was fortunate enough. I guess I decided I wanted to go to my own, and with a partner, we decided to start a company to produce films. We did produce a couple of movies. We signed what's known as a first look deal with Miramax, which gave us a lot of credibility. And to Harvey and Bob's credit, they gave it to us because they knew we were starting out on our own. They really liked us. He worked with me there, and we produced a couple of movies. And then, you know, we had a difficult time making any money. So I went back to Bob and I said, I'd like to start earning some cash again. He rehired me, you know, after 2 years, and I went and I did international marketing and sales. And one of my first job was, he sent me, I guess this is 96, 97, I'm trying to remember the date, 1996, 97, and he sent me to Russia, Eastern Europe, because we had been distributing movies over there and we were owed a lot of money. He says, "I want you to go collect the money, Roodman. Go collect the money. I think you get the money." and we were owed, you know, 7 figures. And he sent me off. I jumped on a plane. I went to, there was we had a distributor there. This was the Wild West of Russia back then too, mid 90s. It was a crazy time. Everybody was like, was unshackled, and it was the Wild West. It really was the Wild West. And I went there. I remember, jumped on a plane, and there was a company that had our rights, but they owed us a lot of money. And back then we used to collect what's known as minimum guarantees. So if a film cost, to make it up $100,000, they'd pay a minimum guarantee of 10 or 20%. So they'd give us the 10 or 20 grand. And then the rest of the money was due after the movie went into distribution, but no one was ever paying. So we would just not collect the money on the second half. And back then there was a ton of piracy. Like our movies would open here and they'd be on videotape in Russia within a week, or Eastern Europe around the, you know, so there was less value to them. So that's one of the reasons they didn't pay. And I remember, so I jump on a plane. I knew that there was a distribution company there that we had to go speak to, but I was going to leverage the other interest from the other distribution companies to collect our money, saying, look, if you don't pay us, I'm going to give all your movies to everybody else. And I landed in Moscow, never been there before. I had one of those crazy cell phones with the big battery packs. At the time, it weighed about 25 pounds. And the plane lands, and 2 guys get on, come to me, and said, come on, you're going with us. And you know, like broken English. So I followed them. I went down the stairs before anybody else got off. I went into this Range Rover right on the tarmac, drove away with a car following. I said, where are we going? I said, we're taking you to your hotel. And I found out later, the reason they did that is they didn't want their competitors to get to me first. They took me to my hotel. And this big hotel in Red Square, I have to look up the name. And I'm like, wow, where am I? It was a wintry day, and I only these images of Russia. It was dark. It's just always like guys were walking around with big hats. You know, just what I'd seen. And I decided, well, I'm going to go into Red Square. It was snowing, and you know, of course, there's color there. I just had these images of black and white. So so I get my phone. I'm going to call my mother back in Ottawa, where I'm from. I'm going to go into Red Square and call my mom and say I'm in Russia. So I go to leave my room, and there's a guy standing there, big guy. He says, where are you going? In broken English. He said, I'm going to Red Square. So you can't leave. So you can't leave. He says, well, we have dinner planned for you. Like I said, well, I'm going. It was just, I don't know, 500 meters, 1,000 meters. I'm going to Red Square. I want to see what it's like. So guy follows me all the way into Red Square. I called my mom and said, hey, Mom, I'm in Moscow. She goes, wow, this is so, I hope this isn't a collect call. No, I said, no, it's not. But, you know, and and then I spent the next 6 weeks in Eastern Europe, because it wasn't just Russia. And there was Bulgaria, and there was all the Eastern Europe, Latvia. I mean, it's just, I don't even remember. And I was just traveling around because they all owed us money. I collected most of the money that was owed, that was being wired back, because they wanted to keep our films. That's how important the thing was. And I got back, and I think Bob actually gave me a pat on the back and said, you did a good job, Joel. So, but it was fun. You know, I would have gotten that opportunity before. That was really cool.
Right. Joel, can we talk about your list of favorite films?
Oh, sure. So I would say that over the years, the way that I determine what my favorite films are the ones that I can turn on at any time, at any point, whenever they're on and running on TV or on a streamer at any point, and just enjoy it from that point on. Right. And I think there's probably 5 movies. The first and foremost one is one that maybe not on everybody's list, but it's The King of Comedy. It was a Scorsese movie from the 80s, starred Robert De Niro and Jerry Lewis. You know, it's about basically celebrity worship and American media culture. I think to this day, it's not dated at all. It's just a really, really cool movie. Sandra Bernhard. I can watch that any time. And then on the opposite end, I loved Airplane. I loved the whole idea of the parody of disaster films, and you know, Leslie Nielsen was just fantastic at that movie. I can, you know, as goofy as that humor is, I still laugh my head off. And you know, Spinal Tap. This is Spinal Tap. again, another so crafty, the whole mockumentary, Rob Reiner and Harry Shearer, and I just it's not boring at all. You watch that and you go, this is a great friggin' movie. It's just so good.
Yep.
And Goodfellas, again, I can watch that movie 100 times. It's fantastic. Just love the story.
Can't look away from it.
No, you can't look away from it. And then of course I mentioned Pulp Fiction, but those are the 5 that sort of stand out in my mind as ones that I love.
I love that King of Comedy is at or near the top of your list. I think that is such an underappreciated film. It's so brilliant, and the way Scorsese figured out how to use Jerry Lewis.
I know. I mean, Jerry Lewis was great in that film.
He's great in it.
Great in that film, right?
He's great because he's not doing his shtick.
Exactly. He's not Johnny Carson, but he's a Johnny Carson-like character.
Yeah.
And De Niro just was so good in that movie. He was just so, he just. I'll tell you a funny story. It reminds me, when I was working at Miramax, we were in the Tribeca Film Center, which is where De Niro had his office. And occasionally there'd be sightings of him. We'd see him every once in a while. He was always one of my favorite actors. And I got on the elevator one day by myself going up to the office. And just as the door was closing, a hand goes in and the door opens and De Niro walks in. He goes, "Well, that was close." And I go, "You talking to me?" And he laughed and he goes, "Oh my God." He said, "That's one of the best deliveries I've heard a million times, this joke a million times." And that was really, really funny. And he chuckled and we went up to the roof. So my Robert De Niro story there.
Yeah. I have read that it was Jerry Lewis's idea to change the character's first name to Jerry. It had been something else. So that they could do the scenes where he's walking through the city, he's walking down the sidewalk, and that's real stuff going on. People, construction workers and office workers shouting at him, "Hey, Jerry, how's it going?" And he's able to give them a little, celebrity wave. That was a brilliant idea.
Really smart. Yeah.
I'm reminded of, another film starring a comedy legend playing a serious role, Jackie Gleason in The Hustler.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't think of one Jerry Lewis comedy film that I like at all. To me, the only film of his worth seeing is King of Comedy, because he's not hamming it up, and being a jerk. Sorry, Jerry, rest in peace.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure there are others, come to mind of the comedic actors playing a serious role and really doing a beautiful job, because they just
I actually just recently rewatched The Hustler, and that is a terrific film. And Jackie Gleason is so compelling.
Yeah.
He is just so magnetic.
And he's acting with Paul Newman, who's just,
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
George C. Scott is great in that movie too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all really good. Piper Laurie, the whole crew, all of them.
Well, what's your favorite movies? You guys have asked me questions. I'd be curious to know. Am I allowed to ask a question here?
Sure.
You can ask.
Go ahead, Chris. Chris, name some favorite movies.
Now, when you were mentioning I like the criteria of a favorite film is a movie you can tune into. It's 1/3 of the way, it's halfway, it doesn't matter. And Pulp Fiction is one that falls into that category for me. Of course, it's episodic and nonlinear, and you can just kind of tune into any episode in the thing. Shawshank is another one that kind of comes to mind, that if it's 1/3 of the way or half of the way in, if I come across it, I'll just there are others. I'm nothing's coming to mind. Dean, go ahead. Do you?
Oh, geez. It's a Wonderful Life, Wings of Desire, Seven Samurai, The Seventh Seal, The Third Man.
I saw that a couple of weeks ago. I hadn't seen it in many years.
Yeah.
That
Boy,
that's the film that put the zither on the map.
that's right. That's right. The Third Man theme on the zither. But that is a film that I just, exactly what you were saying, Joel. Anytime I you know, could just watch that from any point and then can't stop.
You know what? It's another one I'll throw in there to the mix: The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The Clint Eastwood. It's got to be 1968 or something like that. That movie, but that one, the music and the cinematography was just amazing. I don't think there's any English in the movie. Call me crazy, am I right? The actors were.
No. They did the standard spaghetti Western procedure on that, which was using American stars and European supporting cast, and everyone speaking their own language, and then everyone gets dubbed into English.
That's right. Yeah.
But the chemistry of Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach. I'm seeing the great show Mexican standoff scene where you're seeing everyone's eyes.
Yeah, they're squinting at each other for 10 minutes.
Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach, and what's his name? Who's the third guy?
Lee Van Cleef.
Yes, Lee Van Cleef.
Yeah.
And I mean, I could just look at Lee Van Cleef's eyes all day. They were
he was
so
such
amazing.
a cool-looking guy too.
Yeah,
he was a cool-looking guy. Yeah,
great squinter. They were all great squinters. Clint's got a great squint.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, that was good. Patton's another one for me. You know, if I come into the movie late, I'll stay with it. I just think Scott is brilliant in that. Magnificent Seven.
Right.
Right.
You know, and then Hitchcock, for me, a lot of people, you know, Vertigo's at the top of their list. For me, it's Rear Window and Strangers on a Train.
I've got there are a couple of Coen brothers that in the same category as well.
Yes.
Fargo, Oh Brother. Those are films. If they're underway, I don't need to watch it from the beginning.
Right. And then, you know, I'll watch anything by Wes Anderson anytime. Wes Anderson seems to be a love him or hate him thing. I don't understand the people that hate his films, or just don't. The films don't do anything for them. But I mean, to me, Wes Anderson is just about just pure. It's like pure delight of filmmaking. This is a big toy. How can we just play with this and have the most possible fun with it?
I loved Moonrise Kingdom and Grand Budapest Hotel. I wasn't crazy about French Dispatch, the most recent one. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It was beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
They're all beautiful to look at, and the cast he assembles is really remarkable. Anyway, I
let
forgot
me-
we have a guest on the show.
Yes.
Well, no. I just want to mention one that I just saw. That I was with 4 people. 2 of them hated it. One of them thought it was okay, and I thought it was fantastic. Have you seen RRR?
Yeah. Have you seen it, Dean?
What is it?
It's an Indian film. It's a
Oh my God! Oh, I saw the trailer for that
adventure musical. It's just so over the top. I mean, it's
over
the top. Everything.
It's comedic violence. It's comic violence. Like, it's so violent that it's not believable violence. And you know, where a guy could fall off a 30-story building, dust himself off, and keep fighting. Like, it reminds me of the kung fu movies I used to see as a kid, you know, where like Five Fingers of Death. I remember this one where the guy would go, he'd stick his hand in the guy's chest. They'd do a zoom in and be holding this pulsing heart. And that was like, you know, you're supposed to believe that actually happened, right?
Right.
No, it was at its core, it's a bromance.
Yeah.
These two
The trailer was
agendas, but they find common ground and become very devoted to one another.
Yeah, the trailer for RRR was about as much over the topness as I could.
Maybe all you need. Dean, any more you'd like to cover?
I think we've had a delightful time here.
Joel, any?
No, I mean, I greatly appreciate the opportunity. I don't get a chance to talk a lot about the early days there for various reasons, and there's many stories I cannot tell publicly that I'm going to save for my book, which I haven't written yet. And there's many other people that I worked with during those days that have many stories that they haven't told publicly as well. But it was a fun time. It was, I'm fortunate to be, I'm still in the business. I love the relationships. It's a business where, it's who you know, for sure. But I think there's many opportunities for a lot of people to get into that business, to get into the business as well, if they're persistent and make something out of it. And it's great to meet guys like you who are so, passionate about film and talk about films. Like, we could have spent a whole show just everybody talking about their favorite films, and that's all we could have talked about, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's why we do it.
Right. Yeah. Yep. It's all about love.
Well, Joel Roodman, thank you so much for joining us on the Filmosophers show. Really grateful. It's wonderful, fascinating, delightful, and what a great guest and a great time we had with you.
I feel that I'm in good company. I watched quite a number of the ones you've done previously, so I feel honored to be part of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. Please like and share this video, and remember to subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on our newest episodes.